like to call this meeting to order. Confirmation of the agenda that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby accept the agenda of November 10th, 2021 special council meeting as presented, including a 2-minute period for anyone in the audience to voice their opinion at the beginning. Do I have a mover? I have Kevin.
Maybe I'll just flush that out better.
Yep.
So it would be to accept the agenda for the November 10th, 2021 special council meeting as amended, to include a public 2-minute public commenting period as agenda item 4.
And I have a mover. I had Kevin moving. I have Trevor seconding. All in favor? Carries. Thank you. So at this point in time, if there's anybody in the...
Disclosure of pecuniary interest first.
Yes, sorry. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. Any pecuniary? Go ahead, Trevor.
Yes, Reeve, thank you very much. In reviewing the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, I'm going to be disclosing a pecuniary interest on report 5.2, which is the North Huron Museum. As it relates, I have an indirect pecuniary interest due to my employment.
Thank you very kindly. Anyone else? Not seeing any, we shall continue on. So this would be the period, if anybody in the audience would like to speak to anything that's on the agenda today, we have a microphone set up down below there that you can come and speak to it, but it has to be on the agenda. So if there's anyone out there that would like to speak, now would be the time. Okay. Seeing nobody, we're going to move along. Delegations, 4.1 is A&A Ward Consultants and Associates Information Technology Service Delivery Review. Presented the final report, presentation of the final report.
Report right here, and then your appendices, if in case you need to refer to those. Okay.
Morning, Mr. Reeve and members of council. Thank you for your time today. At A&A Ward, we were engaged to perform an IT service delivery review. And as part of that review, we were asked to answer several key questions. I am here today to present the results of the review. What's the advance? Just click?
Yep, it'll just be an arrow key.
Okay. Municipal government is a very complex organization, running many different lines of business. Technology has become a critical element of government, and technology has had a positive impact on virtually every service that a municipal government delivers. The information that municipalities collect is a very valuable asset. Data is the new gold. It can be used to make more informed decisions, provide improved service delivery, and drive efficiency within the organization. And there are many threats to that information, and those threats are becoming more sophisticated. Cybersecurity measures need to constantly evolve to keep pace with the threats and avoid fraud, loss of critical information, and protection of privacy. Citizen expectations of how, when, and where they can get access to services has dramatically changed. They want the ease and convenience they have become used to in other aspects of their lives. Governments are recognizing the need to modernize their services, automate manual processes, and redesign services around residents, visitors, and businesses. This will also free up valuable human resources to focus on more value-added work. In order to accomplish this, the role of technology needs to evolve from being seen as a support or cost center, to being foundational to all aspects of the business of government. Small or rural communities have been slower to recognize the important role that technology can play in improving the way they deliver services. Most started out with somebody internal that had some basic computer knowledge and added support of the computers to their day-to-day functions. North Huron was no different. The individual that had this responsibility left, and the township decided to enter into a third-party support agreement. Some departments have procured applications to support the services they offer, while others are still mostly manual processes based around paper forms. The Laserfiche Project is an important project to begin to digitize existing and new records, as well as start to automate some of the manual processes across the organization. Currently, the township has very limited ability to perform data analytics, to derive more value out of the data and measure the performance and efficiency of the services. Almost all services still require the customer to come to a counter to complete the transaction. Having said this, North Huron is basically right where we would expect them to be, very comparable to small municipalities across the province. You are also well positioned to move towards more modernized and more efficient services. So was a third-party service delivery model appropriate? With no internal staff, with any technology background or capacity to take this on, the existing third-party service delivery model has allowed the township to keep their technology running consistently. To duplicate this work internally would require a wide range of skills, which translates into multiple new positions. So some form of third-party support model is appropriate for North Huron. Is the existing third-party partnership suitable? The company Continuit specializes in technology support for small municipalities. As such, they are familiar with the municipal government. They have had time to become very familiar with North Huron's environment and needs. They are not a full-service IT provider, and there are additional services that North Huron should be considering as outlined throughout this report. The existing partnership is suitable and should be continued, with some modifications and augmented with some other supports. So we assessed the validation of third-party services currently in place, and our review shows that the existing relationship is positive. There will always be exceptions, and these exceptions should be monitored. Continuit is doing a very reputable job of providing a broad range of support and services and meeting the expectations of the current agreement. Throughout this review, we looked at the strengths and weaknesses that currently exist within North Huron. The township has made significant progress in strengthening the availability and resiliency of the existing technology infrastructure because of the work being done by Continuit. This allowed for a relatively smooth transition to remote work required during the pandemic. You have a very good set of applications in place to support a number of departments and services. North Huron is in a good position to take advantage and move to the next steps to a more digitized, modern, and citizen-centered approach to service delivery. Of course, along with those strengths, there's always going to be a number of weaknesses. As indicated earlier, North Huron is at the early stages of their journey to fully realize the value of technology in delivering their services. The weaknesses noted are really the opportunities that can be achieved through modernization efforts. With the majority of the services delivered in a traditional manual paper-based way, there is significant room for improvement and efficiency. We also uncovered a number of gaps that exist within the existing environment. And these will need to be addressed if the township wants to move towards a more complete model for technology and proceed with modernization of the services. Some of these gaps can be addressed within the existing model, but most will require additional investment, dedicated resources, and ongoing support. The action plans laid out in this report provide a roadmap to help guide the township over the next several years. being in a remote area, your network is spread across a wide geographic area, and you have a very good design for that network. But being in a mostly rural area, the township has limited options available for fast, reliable internet. As a result, many of the facilities remote from this building have significant network performance issues that are impacting their ability to get work done, and alternatives should be explored. The township has implemented many IT security measures. As indicated earlier, the number of cyber threats and the sophistication of those threats will require ongoing diligence and continued strengthening of the security measures. This diagram is provided to be used as a placemat or guide that the township can use moving forward as you work through the various action plans. Building a strong technology foundation with good governance to ensure the work is in line with the township's priorities is critical to continued success. So some key themes as you move forward is to begin to recognize technology as foundational to the modernization of your services. Ensure the security around your valuable information assets is a priority. And keep it simple, start small, get quick wins and scale quickly, avoid the big projects. Digital service does not mean online only. Quite often people think that if we do everything digitally, we won't have people coming to the counter or coming over the phone. That is not the case at all. By improving and modernizing your services internally, it'll also improve your over-the-counter services and your over-the-phone services. Redesign your services around the citizen. Most services in the traditional way are designed around a paper form, and they're designed around the staff internally that are dealing with those processes. Modern services are designed around the citizen and work in a way that the citizen expects them to work. Ensure your IT asset management plans are in place to provide sustainability. IT assets are no different than all the other assets that your community has, and making sure that you don't get into infrastructure deficits on your IT assets is very important. Ensure your funding and resources in place to support the action plans. I understand that the new Director of Finance has some experience managing IT, and this could be a good start to getting more IT knowledge in-house. It may be challenging to fit this in on top of the regular duties of this person, but it is definitely an opportunity to move some of the action plans forward. I'll leave it there for now, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you very kindly, sir. Is there any questions from the council? I'm not seeing any, sir. I want to thank you very kindly for coming out and making this presentation.
Thank you very much for your time today.
May the rest of your day go as easy. Before we move on, I'd forgotten one very, very important part of the first of every meeting. We would like to begin by acknowledging that this lands of which we gather is the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, the Ottawa, and Mississauga peoples. And my apologies for forgetting that. Moving on. Go ahead.
Sorry, Reeve. I just in and I guess in follow-up to this report that we got about the IT service delivery, is it the expectation of staff that are going to be taking this report and using this report in a future, like for budgeting purposes, for overall governance, is there I'm assuming what I'm also hearing is a report's going to be coming back from staff as it relates to how this IT delivery review is going to be implemented from a staffing perspective. Is that the expectation of staff, or am I missing something?
Thank you very much, Deputy Reeve Site. Do you want to go ahead.
Sure. Through your worship. So, yes, certainly in terms of, you'll notice in the report, there's some short-term and longer-term areas for, I'll call it improvement. So from a staff's perspective, we're certainly intending in terms of moving forward with those recommendations that are in that report. There will be financial implications, as you can appreciate. And as I'm not sure Harry specifically highlighted it, but there are certainly some key items that we have incorporated or will be incorporating into the draft 2022 budget that we need to move on sooner rather than later. So, yes.
And just to follow up to that, Reeve, I think one of the concerns, and at least from my perspective, from a counselor perspective, is how we communicate our IT goals within our, not only with council, but with the overall corporation. Like, I mean, I use the example, and this is not a fault by any stretch of the imagination, but when communication came out as to amending our passwords, per se, well, it wasn't communicated that we were not going to be able to use the computer to remote into the way we used to do it. We get it on our iPad, but we used to go on Outlook on our computers and do that. Well, that wasn't available to us, and the only way I knew that is because my wife works in the daycare and she got a message that says you can't load by that way. So, I mean, some of the conversation about our IT is not necessarily the issues that we have, it's how we communicate, because I can understand that being super hard and frustrating for somebody who thinks they can go back and do it the same way they used to, but now they can't because something's changed. And I'm not suggesting change is not inevitable. I think it is inevitable. We are a corporation with a budget of $14 million. And I would suggest we have an IT of something of a company who is a lot less. And I mean, we have to acknowledge that one of the comments that was in the report, and we've heard about it in multiple media releases, it's not when we're going to be attacked, it's not how we're going to be attacked, it's going to be when. So we need to ensure that we're ready for those types of things, and making sure training and communication are going to be very key in the future as to not only how staff communicate internally, but how council communicates with themselves, with the public, all of that stuff. I think it's going to be totally critical in the future of how we look at it. It's not going to be just over the phone anymore in the way how we deal with this. I use the example is that I, in my own personal business, lost the ability to send emails out for 3 days last week. I can tell you full out, I can't imagine it being very difficult to be able to survive in a corporation where you can't send out an email for whatever reason. I mean, that's how we communicate every day. So I think we have to be very cognizant of that. Changes are going to cost money, but those monies are going to cost and save us in customer service and other options that are not easily seen on the profit and loss or the budget sheet. We have to be able to willing to change and look at how we affect our employees and as well as ourselves.
Thank you, Deputy Reeve. I'm just going to follow up with that too and give an example of what could take place. So as Trevor said, that we made some changes here a little while ago, and all of us found out that on our home computer, Outlook I guess it's called, you couldn't get your information you're used to reading on a bigger screen. It goes a little deeper with the Reeve, because if we go back into lockdown, I watch you guys on the big screen, hands up and down in conversation, and I read off the little screen, or vice versa if I want, the meetings. But I don't have that ability anymore. I can't see you. I've either got to have a handwritten note in front of me, or I'm not going to see you guys. So that's just an example of how things can jolt left on us in a hurry. Any other conversation on that? Not seeing any. I think I already had a mover and seconder on that, didn't I?
There's no motion with that.
Thank you kindly. 4.2, Monteith Brown Planning Consultants, presentation of key direction of Parks, Recreation, and Culture Master Plan.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to be before you today. I'm Todd Brown with Monteith Brown Planning Consultants, and just wanted to provide today an overview to Council of the Parks, Recreation, and Culture Master Plan. The information that I'm presenting today is information we'd like to go out to the public with to test the master plan before it comes back to Council for consideration and approval. So I have a number of slides that I'm hoping to go through today. To start off with, the purpose of today's meeting is really to provide you with an overview of key directions from the Parks, Recreation, and Culture Master Plan prior to presenting it to the public. As a refresher, the Parks, Recreation, and Culture Master Plan is a key initiative of the Council's strategic plan to establish priorities to meet the needs of residents over the next 10 years. There are a number of inputs that went into the plan, including a review of all background documents, understanding your community's socio-demographic characteristics, looking at trends in community service provision, recognizing that there are impacts of COVID-19 pandemic and how will that affect you both now and into the future. There's an extensive community consultation process, looking at all of your facilities, programs, and services, and also looking at facility utilization and participation. All of that will then be incorporated into the master plan that will contain detailed recommendations. So just as an overview, community profile, the 2016 census, which is really the most recent data available from Statistics Canada, the 2021 census is not out yet. So it had you at 4,940 people. Median age at 43.4 years compared to the county at 46.6 and the province at 41.3. Currently, we estimate with your planning staff that you have about 5,000 people in the community and that could grow to 5,600 people by the year 2031, based largely on active plans of subdivision and things that have been occurring in the last number of years. In terms of trends that could affect participation in parks, recreation, and culture, we see a lack of free time. So people are very busy with their time, and so finding convenient opportunities is important. Growing income disparity is also causing an impact on the haves and have-nots in participating in those activities. We see a growing number of people who are physically inactive, and so that sort of lifestyle of sitting behind their TV, behind their computer, and not being active, not getting out, is a concern from a health perspective. We see demand for active transportation. Inclusiveness and accessibility are critical. Aging infrastructure, multi-use parks and facilities are a growing trend, and celebrating the collaborative or creative industry, and also collaborating with others through partnerships. In terms of the consultation that's been undertaken, we had an initial virtual public information center, which took place over a couple of week time frame. Community online survey, we received about 484 surveys. Stakeholder focus groups, staff workshops, and interviews with members of council and key staff. And hopefully members of council will remember me interviewing them. Some of the things that came out of the consultations included a strong demand for unstructured activities for all residents of all ages, a sense of pride in the breadth of opportunities that are available within your community. There was a recognition that COVID-19 is having an impact on the way people participate, Inclusion and accessibility were top of mind for many residents, including participation regardless of ability, background, orientation, or income. We saw an emphasis on improving the use of existing facilities and creating community hubs or really focal points within your community with your recreation facilities as places of gathering as well. Community groups and volunteers identified that they view themselves as a strength of the community, but there was a concern about the ability to retain and attract volunteers, particularly among the younger age demographic. Strengthening communication and marketing strategies to improve awareness and bolster participation were also identified, as was the importance of the township continuing to support community organizations to ensure that they are successful and therefore take some of the pressure off of you as a municipality and staff to do what they're doing. Just want to highlight just a couple of things off the community survey. For the most part, what we see in trends and what we see in your community is that a lot of people are particularly active in recreation activities that are drop-in, casual, unstructured type of activities, such as going to the market, participating in trails, splash pads, playgrounds. So that's what we've seen really across the province. One of the things that does stand out in your community that's different than we see in most is how high arenas participation was as the third highest activity that people currently see as where they would like to see dollars spent, which typically we would not see that level of height or importance. We've developed a vision and mission for the master plan itself. A vision is really a compelling conceptual image of a desired future state of really where you're trying to go in the next 10 years. So to become a leader in the provision of activities, facilities, and programs and services that support healthy and active lifestyles in the township of North Huron through inclusive, accessible, and high-quality parks, recreation, and cultural services. The mission is really a statement of how you will achieve that. And that is the Recreation and Community Services Department works in collaboration with other township departments, community organizations, and volunteers to provide high-quality parks, recreation, and cultural services to respond to the needs of the community. Lastly, in terms of the structure of the master plan, we've identified a number of guiding principles that the recommendations will be tied to and that will also be important as you implement the master plan itself. These include active, healthy, and connected lifestyles, inclusion and access, fiscal sustainability, commitment to service excellence, invest in infrastructure, strong partnerships, build strong communities, and coordinated approach to service delivery. With that, I want to present today just a number of the key directions that we will ultimately be coming back to once we've tested this with the community, and of course hear any feedback from you today. The first one is to work with the public and stakeholders to enhance spaces to be viewed as community hubs for residents to gather and participate. When we look at the North Huron Westcast Community Complex, this would include investigating the feasibility of converting the concession area to another use that would be more in demand, and we see that as possibly conversion to program, office, or gathering location. Monitoring the use of your indoor sports courts and considering repurposing that space for other opportunities if that demand continues to be low. Investigating the feasibility of relocating the library to the community center, and undertaking facility improvements as identified in the building condition assessments and accessibility site review reports that the township has undertaken. With regard to the Blythe and District Community Center, prepared a parkland redevelopment plan to repurpose one surplus ball diamond to include a skate park, tennis and pickleball courts, and a multi-use pad for basketball and ball hockey. Cease operation of the Blythe campground as there is insufficient evidence to support continuing that service. Again, just like the other facility, repurposing the concession to another use that is more in need which we think is program space, office, and gathering type location. Continuing to evaluate opportunities to establish childcare within the facility, and investigating, again, the feasibility of relocating the library to the facility, again, to create that sense of community hub with all things under one roof. And lastly, undertaking facility improvements as identified in the building condition assessment and accessibility service review report. Engaging the Lions Club to investigate the potential of converting the existing outdoor wading pool to a splash pad. You'll have noted that the public, through the survey, had identified spending dollars on a splash pad is a high priority for them. Evaluating the opportunity to establish a skate park, so a skateboard park in Wingham, to improve opportunities for skateboarding and other wheeled action sports such as scooters and BMX biking for youth. The development of a new skateboard park should be guided by community consultation. And ensuring that you have a good supply of playgrounds located within 800 meters of all residential areas within the urbanized settlement areas, unobstructed by barriers such as roads and waterways. And also addressing gap areas that we've identified. Should be looking at renewing facilities at the end of their life expectancy. Typically, we see playgrounds lasting about 15 to 20 years. So there should be a plan in place to make sure that that renewal is within your capital budgeting process. Any new or redeveloped playgrounds should include barrier-free access components, and also consider natural and adventure play components. Continuing to support organizations such as the Blythe Community Market and the Wingham Farmers Market to ensure that they are successful. A decision will need to be made with regard to the North Huron Museum Committee proposal to determine the future of the North Huron Museum. If the township decides it is no longer going to provide that service, then transferring the museum collection to others should be explored, such as the Huron County Museum, or a desuccession process to divest of the collection should be initiated. Continuing to provide the current service delivery model by providing facilities, programs, and services that are complementary to non-municipal opportunities. Service duplication should be avoided where possible, and certainly continuing to promote partnerships and third-party opportunities is recommended. As with the service delivery review that you had already undertaken, we believe that you should continue to monitor the realignment of services between the Recreation and Community Services Department and the Public Works Department to ensure that it is meeting the community's needs. We did hear through the consultation process that some in the community, including some of the stakeholders, felt that the avenue to have their complaints or concerns heard was sort of not being heard to the degree that they would like it to be heard. And ensuring that all opportunities are inclusive and accessible to all residents regardless of age, ability, and background and orientation. Strategies to create a recreation fee subsidy programs should be looked at. This may be through partnerships with businesses or community organizations along with the municipality. Ensuring that facilities are accessible for persons with disabilities, and maintaining dialogue with the LGBTQ+ community to ensure that their needs are met and that they feel welcome in all community locations. We heard particular interest from youth and from older adults in how their needs were being addressed, and we're recommending that you look at the formation or potential formation of a youth advisory council and a senior advisory committee to ensure that their voice is heard. Those are two age groups that often their voices are not heard as well as they can be. Pursuing a youth-friendly designation and creating an age-friendly plan. Providing opportunities, appropriate resources to township staff, community organizations, and volunteers to deliver the variety of services that are identified and being offered in the community. This would include creating service levels for the provision of parks, recreation, and cultural opportunities, reviewing and updating policies to ensure they're in line with current conditions and expectations. This would include things like inclusivity, exploring new programs to optimize the use of your existing facilities. So we think there is opportunities to use your facilities more, that there are creative ways to do so, and that really encouraging your staff and providing the tools to allow your staff to either directly provide those programs or work with others in the community, volunteer organizations, to provide programs will optimize your facilities. Continuing to invest in your staff through training and professional development, and engaging with community organizations to promote opportunities and improve coordination. Lastly, and I guess this is in line with your previous presenter, is creating a technology plan to expand public outreach and ensure that appropriate equipment and infrastructure are available to your staff. Lastly, preparing a trails master plan to strengthen all connections within North Huron. Again, the community survey really stressed the importance of trails within your community. We heard that through the stakeholder organizations as well. And we know through our research as a result of COVID-19 that there's been a tremendous growth in the pursuit of activities outdoors, particularly trails. So opportunities to extend both ends of the Wingham Community Trail to create a trail loop, establishing accessible circulation areas within your park system, developing new trails within future subdivisions, and partnering with the Conservation Authority to encourage the use of the Wabanash Conservation Area. Lastly, when you ultimately accept the master plan, when we present it back in December, we would suggest that in implementing that plan, that staff undertake annual work plans to guide the strategic implementation of the master plan, with key priorities identified on a year-to-year basis for your consideration. Developing and implementing a regular monitoring process to report back to council on the progress of the plan, and also to make sure that population growth is in keeping with the plan, and the collection of participation data is as we anticipate. So if there's a change in that, then the plan should be reviewed and updated accordingly. We're suggesting that a 5-year midterm update of the plan be undertaken. This can be probably undertaken largely internally through your staff, and that a full review of the plan be undertaken in 10 years to make sure that it is consistent with the current situation that you're experiencing at the time. And balancing the township's funding practices with external sources such as grants, and working with community partners and neighborhood associations or neighboring municipalities, What a master plan does do is it really provides you with an opportunity to have current information available, so that when grants become available, it puts you in a good place to say, we have looked at our needs, we do understand our priorities, and we have a plan in place. And so it puts you in a better position to not only apply, but perhaps getting accepted for those grants. Our next steps is really upon council's direction. We're hoping to go back out to the public with a virtual public open house to present the summary that I presented today, obtain feedback from the community to see if we've missed anything, or see if they feel that we've hit the mark, and receive that feedback to about November 25th, finalize the plan, and then bring that back to you on December 6th for your consideration. I did want to note that although I'm here myself, Todd Brown, Dennis Kwan from our firm has been extensively involved in this master plan, so I did want to give him his due to recognize the importance of his work in working with your staff and the community. So with that, I'd be pleased to answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you very kindly for that presentation. So I'm going to open it up to council now. Questions, comments, or concerns? Go ahead, Trevor.
Yes, thank you, Reeve. I think this is more of a comment than anything. As I read this master plan, there does not seem to be a lot of emphasis on segregation, and when I talk about segregation, I talk about segregation in the sense of, we're only going to have that option in the town of Wingham versus the town of the village of Blythe, or whatever that case is. The one comment I will say is we, as in the township of North Huron, provide a lot of services, provide a number of services that larger municipalities would love to have, I would argue. Everything that I've seen here is really not removing anything. It's really more adding. And I was surprised when I read the survey results, when there wasn't the top 10 priorities seem to be very, and the really strongly support or somewhat support, there wasn't anything close. They're really wanting to support it, but yet I have a concern in the sense that nobody wants high taxes. And when I look at what this significant plan provides, it provides enhancements to a lot of our villages and towns and for people of the whole community, which is going to result in a significant investment by the municipality, which then in turn is going to be required by the taxpayers of North Huron. So, as I look at this plan and how we implement this plan and what the information comes back from the virtual public information is, people need to understand that if this is the plan that we truly believe is important to the success and the viability of the municipality, that when we look at our budget, don't completely think that the budget's going to say your taxes are going to go down. I think we have to be recognized and be realistic as to what our rec and master plan has to have, but also understand that we have had a number of individuals come and ask municipality for a skate park and a splash pad and multiple other things that we have been waiting for this, which obviously just reiterates the fact that they want it, we should have it. But in saying that, the parents of those children and everybody else in the municipality are going to have to pay for it. And I think arguably my concern is North Huron is looked upon as having a number of way too many services for the size of our municipality. And if we want to have those services, that's fine, but there's going to be a cost associated to having those services. And you can't have it both ways. And I think that's my comment to the people that are listening and that are going to be seeing this plan is this is an auspicious goal. This plan is a lot of infrastructure that we're talking about. Which that infrastructure then needs to be looked at. What is it going to cost in 20 years when it needs to be replaced and all that kind of stuff. I would love to have it all. I really would. But I think we have to be realistic in the sense of what the municipality is going to pay for, and understand that if the survey is what the survey is, then fine, then the overall public, which I heard to say because the community survey was 400 people approximately, 400 actual surveys, when we have 3,000 household or 3,000 or more people in the municipality. So, I'm just not sure what the public's appetite is, the overall public's appetite is to basically invest a significant amount of infrastructure that we've got here over and above what we already have. These are things that, some of these things we have not had, or we've had temporary fixes, like skate parks and stuff like that, where we haven't had them. So, Reeve, it is an auspicious goal, and the master plan is exactly what we asked, Todd and his group to provide us from what the public was wanting, but I want the public to understand there's a price to that request. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Reeve Sipes.
If I could comment just briefly, certainly as a municipality of your size, you do have a fair number of facilities, including an indoor pool, which, is a substantial cost. There is not a pool out there that makes money. They run deficits, and that is just how an indoor pool does it. So there certainly are, you do have a breadth of facilities that are out there for a community of your size. It does attract people to your community from a business perspective and from a residential perspective. So from an economic development perspective, I think that's something that obviously council has to weigh. I can't weigh that for you, but there is some benefit to that. I do want to say that the 484 surveys that we received from the public, in addition to the community online open house and the stakeholder sessions, that was input. Just because they said it didn't mean that we were going to come back to you and say the public wants it, therefore we're going to recommend it. We did a whole lot of analysis to look at opportunities that you have and where we think that there is areas for improvement. So for youth in particular, when we talk about skateboarding, that is something that keeps kids active. It's no longer a fad. 30 years ago when I started doing these plans, it was a fad, and you could sort of say, it's going to come for a few years and go for a few years, so do we really need to put in a skateboard facility? It's now become, really something that is consistent for many, many years. We see youth of all ages, as well as young adults, participating in skateboarding. And so to keep them busy, keep them active, keep them in a location where you want them to skateboard, as opposed to skateboarding downtown and getting in the way of people, it is an activity that does have tremendous merit, recognizing that there is a cost to that. We've tried to identify a number of recommendations where it really is working in partnership with others to try to work with your community organizations, work with government granting opportunities, but certainly there is an impact on the tax base, and I agree with the councillor in that respect that there is that. We do think there is opportunity to improve utilization of your facilities, but that does take time and that does take effort from your staff and from volunteers, organizations, so that will take some time. But it is, I would say, it is a 10-year plan, so the expectation wouldn't be that you deliver all of this tomorrow, that it would be over a 10-year time frame, and there is a need to be somewhat sort of visionary or moving towards something that gets your community where it needs to be. We have identified surplus ball diamond, for example, where you're maintaining a diamond that is really not needed, and it does create an opportunity to where you have land that could be repurposed to some of these other uses, recognizing, of course, that there is a cost to putting those uses on that land.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Reeve. A couple of points. I agree with our Deputy Reeve about the cost to the taxpayer. But there's some points that I think are really good. I think we're going to have to pick and choose them over time. That's probably the only way, and look for grants, of course. But something for the kids is something other than splash pad. Like the splash pad's good, but a roller park, I've been thinking about that for a while, and then we've been requested it. I see it in other municipalities, and they're heavily used, and it's a good way to keep the kids off this. And I think that's good. But the other point is, you kept on mentioning inclusion and accessibility. I totally get the accessibility, but the inclusion, I wonder why that word, I know it's kind of a buzzword, but I wonder why it's kept on, like you mentioned it a half a dozen times. Like, we're not a municipality of racists or bigots. Our doors are open. I don't understand why that has to be used, because we're just a bunch of people that, and we include everybody. everyone has rights. I'd like a comment on that.
So inclusion, it wasn't intended to be used to suggest that you were not inclusive at present and that there was somehow something that was a statement on the community itself. What it was really to try to do is to recognize that we heard through some of our stakeholder consultations. We know that in addition to that, across the province, there is a movement to make sure that communities are thinking inclusively when they develop programs, when they work with community organizations, that those organizations are inclusive. But inclusive can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. So inclusion is, can you afford to participate in recreation and culture? Is that, and that doesn't mean that everyone should be able to play hockey necessarily, but can they participate in something and feel that they can afford to do so? Are facilities and parks accessible for persons with disability? A percentage of your population will have some form of disability, whether it's sight, ability to walk, and not necessarily be in a wheelchair, but have some form of disability that affects their ability to participate. So looking at accessibility from that perspective, being a welcoming community where people, as I mentioned in the presentation, the LGBTQ plus community often is not always recognized. And so sometimes it's a matter of just taking a step back and saying, are we being welcoming? Are we talking to the representatives of that community to make sure that they feel welcome within our parks and our facilities and so forth? So it's more a matter of moving forward and making sure that as you make recommendations or implement things, that you're thinking about, is it affordable? Is it accessible? Playgrounds in particular, can children of all abilities get to your playgrounds? And when they get to your playgrounds, are they accessible? Do they have components associated with them that make them accessible? So inclusive in the sense of not that you have current barriers and not that you're not thinking inclusively. It's just more highlighting the fact that moving forward, it is an important thing that you as a municipality continue to promote, but also working with your community organizations to make sure that they also recognize the importance of being inclusive in their program offerings or in their facility provision. And an example might be our recommendation for the Lions Club, working with the Lions Club to see if there's an opportunity to convert the splash pad to a spray pad. Spray pads are very accessible. A wheelchair can get right through it, where a wading pool can have barriers in terms of getting it down into the water and participating. So those are things that, as we move forward, it's just a matter of thinking that. So I didn't want, I'm sorry if my emphasis was if I stated that word inclusive often. It wasn't intentional. It was really just a matter of trying to recognize that it is an important thing moving forward, and that inclusiveness is a lot of things. And inclusive can be for your older adults as well. So as your seniors get older, is it inclusive? Is there an ability for people with all ages, abilities, and so forth to participate in some form of culture and recreation in your community?
Okay.
Go ahead, Paul.
Through you, Reeve. Yeah, your number 4 there, you said ensure playgrounds within the 800 meters of residential, and the 2 proposed places there. Are you saying then that we don't have enough playgrounds in our municipality?
Well, I think what we're saying is that we've identified a couple of areas that are potential gaps. And so it's a matter of looking at them and in more detail and determining whether it's a true gap or whether it's whether people from those areas are able to get to another playground within a reasonable time frame without crossing a major barrier. So we have identified in our research that there are potentially a couple of gaps that could be filled. It doesn't necessarily mean that you would have to put a full playground at each of those locations. Maybe it's a smaller playground apparatus just to create an opportunity in those locations. And certainly as your community continues to grow and see future development, it will be a matter of monitoring those future subdivisions to see if there's opportunities for parkland that could accommodate playgrounds as well.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Kevin.
Thank you. Through you, Reeve. Just a quick note on to Councillor Heffer's comment. North Huron doesn't have a playground in Blythe. Just for that, for you to know that. I'm not sure where to start on the master plan. I was obviously thinking of receiving something completely different. I wasn't looking for the recommendations. I had in my mind that we were actually going to get something that we could actually base decisions on. Dollars and cents, usage, not usage, future trends. I thought we were going to get a breakdown of what it actually costs the municipality to run the stuff that we have, and see if it aligns with what the municipality wants. Much of this information is already in our strategic plan, one that we proceeded to do when we were first brought onto council. We have other assets in our municipality that have breakdowns of what their equipment's worth, when it's replaced, how can it be removed, how can it be extended by, and how important it is that we replace it right away, and how does that fit into being able to provide the plans. All that infrastructure decision, maybe that's another plan down the road. So I'm not going to put that responsibility onto the presenter here. But just a few things I picked out of your plan. I'm just curious to understand why. There's 2 ball diamonds in Blythe, and there's 2 ball diamonds in Wingham. Why did you pick the one that was in Blythe for usage? Baseball's usage across the board is down, and if you're taking COVID into consideration, there's no sense of taking any data from COVID because we've never been here before, and we're hoping to get back out, or else God help us all. And the other one is ceasing offering camping and services in Blythe Campground, as there's insufficient evidence to continue offering the camp services. I just don't know if you realize the significance of doing that. During the annual, and I'm just going on usual, for the last 40 years, there's been a major cultural North Huron an entity posted there for the farming and the heritage aspect of our culture. That brings in, that would have 4,800 campsites used in that period. There's 600 roughly campgrounds there. They're there for 8 days, some even longer than that. I would like to see any campground in a small municipality that has 4,800 campsites being done at any time. Havelock has a music festival. They're only there for one weekend, but they bring in 20,000 people. If you look at it, the rest of the 364 days a year, thing's useless. But it's beneficial. So I just don't understand where your recommendation to cease camping would cease that festival. That festival is the bread and butter for every volunteer organization in town. Some of them, that is their only way of getting revenue for the year, or the only, not going to say, only reiterate. It's not the only way. But for some of them, that's the only one they need. Baseball teams, hockey teams, ringette, broomball, selling hot dogs, selling church groups, selling beef on a bun. They'll sell enough in that one weekend, or that one weekend of the use of that camping facility, that they don't have to. That they've sponsored everything they want to do that year. So to make an educated request that you cease offering camping It just baffles my mind. And North Huron doesn't offer camping during that time. That camping is done by another organization. Doesn't take a lick of staff time for camping to set up, to bring the trailers in, to bring them out. They do that on their own organization. The property was bought for nothing. Was handed over for nothing. We have no dollars in the game in that property to say that the taxpayers are on the hook for 80 acres. I'm very passionate about this. And you talk about like including a skate park. We have a skate park in Blythe. Municipality doesn't put a penny into it. They don't upkeep it, they won't even paint it. So ask you to build another one when we won't even keep up the one we've got. Like, are in this rec plan, are our heads in the sand in this? We're shooting ourselves in the foot to paint a pretty picture that we need to do all this stuff. We don't even do the stuff we've got now. So I just would like some kind of a response as to why you would say, and it's the only portion in this that you say to cease. The rest is, if it don't have people coming to it, we'll look at it in a couple of years. We got stuff now that doesn't pay. Recreation doesn't pay. But to circle out one little response that would kill a town. It would cease a little village to have any. It takes away their identity. Takes away the biggest project that North Huron has going as far as cultural goes. All for a simple. Please respond to that. As I don't understand, and I mean, secondly, when the request for this to go out to the public, I would like to see that be in a public, not a virtual, but a sit down where the evaluation of this plan with the things that are in it, you can get the feedback from the people that I get or will get from some of these decisions that you're presenting that we do here. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you very much, Kevin.
Okay. I will hopefully remember all of your comments.
Sorry, I went on for a long time.
That's fine, and I appreciate your passion. We did look at utilization of, so I'm going to start with the ball diamonds. So we looked at utilization of ball diamonds pre-COVID. We recognized that during COVID, looking at any kind of utilization or participation would not make sense, other than recognizing that things like trails have been much more heavily used. We know indoor facilities and many sports organizations were not able to run during COVID, or not for the majority of it. So we primarily focused on the 2017 to 2019 timeframe. So looking at the utilization of the ball diamonds, looking at the number of participants that were in ball at that time, and looking at trends, we felt that there was an oversupply of diamonds. The utilization of the diamonds in the Wingham area was stronger historically. And we also saw that an opportunity when we're looking at land, that if we remove one ball diamond that's surplus in the Blythe area, that it creates an opportunity for some of the other things that we've identified as needed. So when we talk about pickleball tennis court combination, that would be a fantastic location for something of that nature within that area. So we really did look at utilization, looked at participation, looked at trends, and looked at opportunities for future use. With regard to camping, I should really clarify this. So when we talk about ceasing operation of camping, it was not ceasing operation of camping for the major event. It was more on an ongoing basis. You have a handful of campground sites that are being tested right now in a pilot project to see if there's validity in continuing forward with that handful or growing that. It was more from that perspective, that we didn't see the township as benefiting tremendously from that, from providing that, given the costs associated with it, that it would be better to refocus your energy in other areas, at the same time continuing to provide that camping opportunity for special events. We recognize the importance of that in the community, and that it does draw tremendous crowds to the community, and it does support a lot of your community organizations through funding. So we're not making any recommendations that would suggest otherwise. I agree. The way I presented it was not clear enough. So we will, before going out to the public, we will certainly clarify that, because I agree with you. It does not, it does not read that way when I hear your comment back. It resonates that we didn't make that clear. So we will do so. The master plan itself, so what we presented today was really an high-level overview of some of the key directions that we see moving forward. The master plan itself will be a very detailed document that looks at all of your trends, demographics, facility utilization, programming, staffing, and so forth, and it will justify or rationalize each recommendation. So it will be very detailed, and it will bring you to the conclusion that we've come to. You may or may not agree with all of those. And obviously as council, that it's your prerogative to decide which recommendations you would move forward on and which you would not. Our recommendation is typically that a council would approve a document as a guiding document. So therefore you wouldn't be approving all the recommendations, and that you would ask your staff to bring forward recommendations so that you could make a decision over the next 10 years on each one of those different recommendations. Because things do change, opportunities change, and so what we're suggesting, say 5 to 10 years out, may not make sense in 5 to 10 years because something may have changed that. There may be recommendations that are further out that should come sooner because funding may become available or a partner may come forward with an opportunity. So that document will be much more detailed than what you're seeing in front of you today. And I guess lastly, just in terms of consultation, this is honestly the first meeting I've been to in person since March 2020. We have done all of our consultation, all of our council presentations virtually. We have found that we have get a lot more response back from the community by being online, but also creating paper versions. So paper version of the community survey was available. Certainly testing this master plan, paper version of the comment sheet would be available so that people could fill it out in addition to doing it online. What we find is our resources, often we will come to a public meeting and we end up spending a lot of time and resources, your dollars, and we end up with 5 or 10 people coming out. And it's rather disappointing to know that you spend a lot of money and time to sort of do that when we're finding that our virtual opportunities are getting a lot more people involved in your community to provide comment and review material. So, and over a longer period of time. So they don't have to show up, one night over a couple of hours. They have a couple of weeks of time frame that they can give their input to. So I would recommend to you that we continue with the virtual approach. We also do not want to be a COVID-19 spreader by encouraging the public to come together in a location. And so we're cognizant of the reality that some people are quite nervous of that. So ultimately, we're in your hands on that decision. But we have found tremendous success, and in fact, greater success. 484 surveys online is a tremendous response from the community. If we had mailed out a survey to all of your residents, that would have been a very high achievement, even as a mail-out survey. So the online version is working really well. If we had done a telephone survey, we would have been targeting probably, I think, about 384 surveys responses. So again, we're getting really good feedback, but also just want to make sure council's really clear that just because the public said something doesn't mean we accepted it. It was only an input in addition to everything else and the experience that we bring to the table. Our firm's prepared 400 master plans or recreation and culture specific studies. I think you would find that is more than anyone else in the province, if not the country. So we do have a lot of background in this that we bring to the table and hopefully benefit your community.
Thank you very much. Rebuttal,
Kevin?
Yes, yeah, I'm not, thank you for the report. I'm not in any way of degrading your excellent report and your abilities to bring forward an oversight that we as council need as a third party looking in. But I'm just curious, in all of your reports, and this one included, I've never seen one that only specifically said on one singular context to cease. Nothing else in the entire, so if you're looking for input and you're talking about only having 5 people show up, I'm sure if you put that out to the public and the media is here, that this is in the plan, I'll guarantee you will fill this place. So as far as not only 2 people showing up and I'm just saying good luck with that one.
Just for clarity though, Councillor, I did want to make sure that it was clear that we were not saying cease total operation. It was more the handful that are ongoing, that, you know, people are coming for a day or two and moving on. We recognize that camping is a key aspect and should continue at that location for your major events.
The information that you alluded to that will be in the report, that is much more detailed, that was the report that I was expecting today. As I said earlier, this is in our strategic plan. I could have grabbed any of this right out of the stuff that we've already got on our website. So I look forward to that. I hope we have the ability to absorb it and debate it future, much like we are doing this today, seeing this report today. As you alluded, this is a very high level. If I can cover it with my thumb, that's what's in here. You know, it's a safe distance. We're not looking for safe. At least I'm not as a counselor. I'm looking at specific problems and how we can fix them. So I look forward to the added input into this report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Falk. Go ahead, Trevor.
Yes, thank you, Reeve. I want to make sure, you know, I just as a comment to Councillor Faulkner's question, you know, I mean, high levelly, we should be happy that the majority of the discussion that's in this report, in this high level thing that is that we're looking at in our strategic plan today. Like, I mean, if any of this was new in the sense of earth-shattering things, I would be more disgusted with ourselves than the planner. We're not asking him to tell us something new. We should be already reviewing this to ensure that we're ultimately doing what our residents are wanting. So, I mean, from my perspective, I look at this as a re-envision and saying, are we doing the right things? And I mean, if you look at the key directions, for the most part, we've had a lot of those things in our strategic plan since we developed it. A lot of them got kiboshed the minute COVID-19 hit. So, I mean, this council and the next council after that, I think I look at this as a guide, as the presenter has indicated, and says, you know, any council that would take this any plan and say of this magnitude and say, good luck, staff, isn't realistic. I mean, I think if you take it as a guiding principle and say to staff, as things progress, bring these initiatives to us for debate and discussion and that stuff as we see it, I think you're going to get, one, you're going to get a lot more traction. Two, you'll get a lot more community input as it relates to, because what will happen is you'll get people who are involved in that particular aspect of the plan, and not just an overwhelming amongst the people that come and talk about everything in the plan, because it doesn't really affect them in all that mistake. So, I mean, I'm not surprised in the sense that, I think ultimately it gives us a guiding light that says, you know, we're not going out of our way to do something that is not important to the community. And I think we are looking at that. You know, I would argue right now, and as Councillor Faulkner's alluded to, like I would have, if we hadn't done anything with the Wingham Trailer Park, I would suggest that that would have been in here too. I mean, I think we have already done certain things, therefore they're not in this report, and I think there's other things that we are already looking into, concession stands, those types of arguments, we're already looking into those. So to say, I suspect the report we're gonna get that's a whole lot more detailed, I'm gonna say is a lot more than 20 pages. It's probably 120 pages, if not more. So to say what that logistics is, a lot of that communication is going to be staff-related, utilization, providing recommendations on how we see this. And we need to look at it not only from a recommendation standpoint, from a staff perspective, but we got to look at it politically. Like that's what we are. We're municipal councilors and Reeves that have a political notation to every decision that we make, whether we think there is one or not. So, arguably, I'm not surprised. There is going to be certain things that are uncomfortable for people to look at because it's change. And anything that we talk about in change, it's uncomfortable. We as a council have made difficult decisions and been able to take a lot of a brunt from a lot of different people over the last 3 and 4 years to make difficult decisions. So I think any decision we make from regards to this plan, I think we also have to resonate to the fact that even if we recommend this plan, there's an election in 6 months, we probably aren't going to see a lot of implementation of this plan unless we're reelected. So I think we have to resonate to that fact as well.
Thank you very much, Deputy Reeve. Anyone else? Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, thank you, Reeve. I just got a quick comment, and I'm looking forward to the public feedback.
Thank you. Go ahead, Chris.
Excuse me. Thank you, Reeve. Yeah, this is just a summary. And I liked it. I knew it was kind of on the light side, but that's what summaries usually are. And I looked at the next steps, and it'll be filled in. So our next one is going to be, it'll be a good one. You'll like it, Councillor Faulkner. Well, you won't like the ceased part, but yeah, that happens. Doesn't mean it goes that way. You know that. So it's a suggestion. So we'll see what happens, and I look forward to your next step.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Thank you. Thank you, Reeve. Just in my own defense on that, on my remarks, I'm sure I'd be hearing a lot more pushback from the other wards if the other wards were initiated in here in context that East Wallmanash was going to lose some cultural heritage. I know you're large on the farming community and their heritage and their background and being able to sustain life as it was in the for our forefathers, and also in the Wingham ward, if Wingham was going to lose a major portion of their cultural and economic viability, that the comments coming from other councillors will also be as boisterous as mine. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's my turn. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
Oh, this is getting silly now. I'm going to stop after this. Reading this, I knew that it was relating, as far as the trailer park, I had a good feeling that it was relating to the, and then reading our next information piece that's coming, it related to the test trailer park. So, that was this man's opinion from the information that he knew. So, it may or may not go, but that's what he was relating to. And I'm sure you knew that too in your heart. You were just pushing it.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Okay, I'm going to speak now. So I reviewed this, and there's a few things that come to mind. First of all, we're going to start with the key community survey findings. It doesn't mention daycare or related services. There's no township-run activity for the children or summer camps, as I call them. But in the mission statement, there's provisions for activities and the sport of active lives. In the key directions, the Westcast and the library, switching the Wingham Library over to the Westcast, the Wingham Library I do not believe costs us anything. I believe it is run by the county, actually. Has nothing to do with us. It was in Blythe, we had conversations about locations for, I believe, a library switch. So there's a bit of a mix-up there, I do believe. And understand, this is COVID-19. We're all working under difficult circumstances. So the key directions, number 5, there's no farmer's market in Wingham to continue. It's been dissolved for a while, so it would be to recreate that. Key directions, partnering with Maitland Valley Conservation Authority. Honestly, they've let their buildings fall right down. This town should not be paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to rebuild their buildings, so that for me is, I'm not sure why we'd want to partner with them. Implementation, the balancing the funds with our neighbors. We've had a long, drawn-out, hard deal with that. I'm going to say right now, unless somebody tells me differently, that this should not be coming before a public meeting. There are too many concerns that have been raised and need to be dealt with as a council. And yourself coming back and dealing with the staff, I'm not comfortable with going to a public meeting. I want that off there until this council has a chance to see the entire program, have a debate about it. You've heard our concerns today. We'd like you to go back and address them. Again, it's COVID-19. You're doing the best you can do, provided the information you've given. But as Kevin said, we, the local people, know that even though that campground is used once a year, it's amazing. It is just amazing what it does for farming communities, for the town of Blythe. So we'll get into that another time. So if you could take all the information you've heard and unless council.
Maybe I'll clarify the process here, right? So this is the consultant's report. They wanted to provide an opportunity for council to see these key directives before the public got the opportunity, like the privilege to see them, right? So that council was in the know before it was presented to the public. Then there's that public consultation piece, and then the final report's going to come back. Whether council agrees with what's in that report or not is up to council. Council can dictate what you guys do, what action you take out of the report, but that's why the consultants were brought in, to bring that independent opinion. Otherwise, council could have just made decisions regardless, right, of their own process. So I think the way it's set up right now is, so these findings, this slideshow, just like it was presented to council today, will be presented to the public. That feedback will be taken into consideration by the consultants, and then your first regular council meeting in December 6th, the consultants will be back to present the final version, right? Then at that point, council can have a debate on what you do and do not want to use out of that plan, and if Councilor Falconer's mentioned whether to have significant discussion on that, right? So December 6th is not the only time you guys can discuss it, right? We can bring that back in multiple meetings. We can have a special council meeting where you guys want to discuss specifics of it. But I think at this point, you want to let the process finish playing out, have that final plan, and then have your discussion on what you as council do and do not agree with, and based on that, right? Because I guess, for lack of a better way to put it, that was the purpose of bringing in the consultants.
Thank you very much, Carson.
Hopefully that provides some clarity.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Okay, thank you very much for that clarification. I'm not sure if we need to speak to any more, Vicky. I believe Carson has pretty well let us know that this is just an information. It sounds like we will be moving on with the public consultation. And you've heard the feedback from the council to start with. So if we're all good, I do appreciate you coming out, sir. Thank you for making the trip, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Could I ask one quick question? Is, with regard to the clarification on the campgrounds, can we make that change to the slide so that it's clarified that it was the temporary camping as opposed to the, just when it goes out to the public, just for that clarity? I mean, it will be slightly different than what you're seeing, but it's just it's just more of a clarification. Just want to make sure you're fine with that.
Better name, maybe, look, call it what it is, the pilot project of camping.
Kevin?
This decision has nothing to do with the pilot project.
No, but it's a name. We're just keeping something,
The only thing I disagree with is that it's in here at all. On the simple premise that nothing else is singled out for cessation, other than that one particular piece. If everything was in there for cessation, that's fine, it's an overall report. But when the report says only one specific portion has a different designation than the rest of the program, that's where I take consideration. I don't care if it's in there or if it's not in there. I just want every single piece to be ruled under the same light, that's all.
I'm going to give the last word to Vicky over here. Vic?
Well, we're gonna have the other program next, but
Oh, yeah, you're coming up next anyway, Vicky. Okay, so I want to thank you very kindly for coming out, sir.
Thank you.
just a supporting comment. Can I?
Yes, go
can I
ahead.
speak? I'm agreeing with you. Because it's a pilot project and we're dealing with it independently, perhaps it shouldn't be in it.
Yeah, we're going to have Vicky speak to this now.
So Reeve,
Yes.
I just want to make sure, is the consultant clear that he's, I think he's okay with change, if he thinks that what he's put in the report doesn't really relate to what he actually believes, then change what you need to change in order to actually satisfy what your recommendation is. That, I think we're happy with that.
Yes.
I just want to make sure he's okay with that, because I didn't think he got really an answer.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very kindly. Okay. Reports. Blythe Campground Pilot Project year-end date, 5.1. Vicky, you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Worship. So before you this morning is the year-end report for the pilot project. Council had requested this at the time of approving the enhancements for the Blythe Campground. The information that we've presented in the report is for informational purposes, just to let council know where things are basically sitting. So if there's any questions.
Trevor's going to take the floor for a second.
Sure. It's okay.
Councillor Faulkner.
as a grin. Just the project was initiated for 25 sites. Some of the forecasted repairs, maintenance, staff, implementation costs are associated for the entire camping, because it's hard to just pick out these 25 sites. So these expenses are for the maintenance of all 700 sites. You got to cut grass. You take out, you're cutting your grass, and you take out all the maintenance and everything, and then just apply it to all those sites. The math that you've given us here, given me here, works out to about $100 per site. So the actual incurred expenses for this pilot project would only be $2,500. Not, well, let me explain my thinking on here. That if it costs $71,000 to maintain 25 sites, and all you have to do is cut the grass, because we have an automated system, I'd like a breakdown of that $71,000 for 25 sites for 4 months. I just don't think the math is properly segregated for this one project. And my other comment on the project as far as it was implemented, had very little structure to it. The 25 sites that were asked to be in the program, through the program's implementation, were spread out between 20 acres. You could have a site here, site there. You would have to take a picnic table over there. You would have to take a fire pit over here. You have to go and get better the next day. It wasn't a set project spot for 25 sites that we could maintain. Picnic tables would be there, fire pits would be there. So the labor of moving them around was our own problem, made by ourselves, in the implementation of it. The number of participants, since we have no way of gauging that other than what comes in across our website, we don't know the total number. We have no way of finding that number, because no one goes out and sees if there's 15 people camped there. Honestly, I go out every week, almost every day, and I count. And I look forward to the number at the end of this project. And I don't think they're accurate. So I'll stop it there. I have 100 other comments on this, but
Thank you.
I'll stop at that and let some rebuttal come back in from the staff.
Go ahead, Vicki.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. I'm not wishing to offer a rebuttal, but what I'd like to provide some clarity on the numbers and things so that we're clear. The numbers that were presented in the report were based off of actuals, and you are right, Councillor Faulkner, in that the 71,000 deficit is for the overall campground, okay? That is accurate 100%. But the cost that this council approved in the spring was to undertake enhancements of $18,000, and those enhancements were undertaken. The revenue that was generated from the campground this year was $15,000. Okay. So right there, we're already at a deficit just for that enhancement issue. And in terms of the costs associated with it, there were some staffing costs that were included in the original report to do that. What we found, we ran into a problem with the campers coming on site because they didn't want to be where we had designated it to be. They wanted to be somewhere else on the site. So we did not set out picnic tables, 25 picnic tables all in one area. The online registration that was set up, they had to request if they wanted a picnic table, and those picnic tables were put out as requested. So it wasn't as if we put them, we're dragging them around. The other thing is that they would have had to been moved around anyway for the grass cutting if they had been out on site, because either the grass cutting or weed eating around them. In terms of the numbers, there's different ways of looking at the actual numbers of usage. The numbers that you're referring to in terms of online, there wasn't just online, there was people phoning in. There were more people phoning in to book their spaces than there were online. So that's where those numbers came from. They are our records from the people who called in and registered for their spots, as well as those who use the online system. Simple math, you can look at it and you can take the cost or the revenue that was brought in and divide that over the cost of an actual site, and keeping that in consideration. I mean, the only large group that we had come in this year was for that ball tournament at the end of August and things, which was beneficial there. But otherwise, when you look at the report, and we can provide council with that report and break it down day by day so that you know the numbers that were on the campground and things, if council wishes. We have that capability of doing that, so that council can certainly see. what was actually occurring over there. But other than the timeframe when the ball tournament was there, we did not use all 20 of those sites. The campground was fully open. It wasn't that we only opened 25 sites. The campground itself was fully open for the season, just as it always was. It's just that we had the availability of picnic tables and fire pits to offer the 25 enhanced sites.
Thank you, Vicki. Go ahead, Kevin.
Thank you. So in a summary for Blythe Campground Pilot Project, I'll use that word, pilot project, for 25 sites, we're including information for the entire campground. We're talking about ball tournaments coming in, large, I'd like to know the numbers that you have that were in for that ball tournament, because I went around every day and counted. And I can guarantee you that there was 10 full-size sites and a camper on one site. So whether they were being monitored as to whether they needed an extra site, how many people were on site like a normal campground would do. And to a response to your to the fire pits being moved around, tables moved around, you go to any park, provincial park, the fire pit's there, not moved around. You don't get it. If you want a site with a fire pit, you take the site that's got the fire pit. The rest of it has a fire ban. You're not allowed to burn there or whatever. So it's in the implementation of the pilot project that I have concerns with. If you want a project to succeed in wholeheartedly, you take steps to try and ensure that that's going to happen. We're talking about expenses incurred here, that we had $18,000 allotted for fire pits and picnic tables. We had volunteers that volunteer providing tire rims. Yes, I know we kind of got to be above the ground and whatever, but we had an offer of free truck rims, 25 of them, that would get us off the first start for this pilot project. But we wound up with ones that are worth $500 a piece. They've got North Huron laser engraved into these things. I would love to have one. And I'm sure anybody that went there camping would love to throw it in the back of their car, because these things are amazing. For a pilot project that you want a fire pit and a picnic table, and you want this project to succeed, I can't see being overindulging on the products that you provide to the people, so that the numbers are.
I'm going to go to Vicki wants to answer that, and then to Trevor.
Through your worship, so the expenses for those fire pits were within the budget that was provided.
I realize that.
Provided to council and approved by council. The free ones that came afterward were after the fact. Okay,
I
the
don't
offer
remember
was.
that coming to council. The
No,
design.
it was
and-
after the fact that offer came forward.
Yeah, I realize that, but
But we had
you're saying that we.
Guys, okay, everybody's going to talk to me, and everybody's going to take their turn. I know this is a bit of a heated debate, and I understand why. So we're going to start with Vicki. Go ahead.
Through your worship, I am more than happy to bring forward a more detailed report. This was an informational report for council to review. They asked for an informational report at the end of the season, and if there's specific things that council would like to see, if they want to see a breakdown of daily usage and things like that, we can certainly provide it. There was staff on site every day. We had to be because of the COVID requirements for cleaning washrooms and things like that. So, staff were checking and making sure that if someone was there, that if they had not registered with the office, they were not on the list from the office, then they were able to check the online program and see if they were there. If the people weren't there, if the people were there, they were required to provide proof that they had paid for the campsite.
Okay, thank you kindly. I'm going to go to Trevor first. He had his hand up.
So in one respect, I can understand Councillor Faulkner's question about, we had a pilot project for 25 sites. We're looking at the cost for the entire the entire plot. Biggest cost associated to that entire site is you flick the water on and you have 700 sites that are available. We can't segregate the water for 25 sites. Because if we could, that's what we'd do. I mean, if I would like to do that, if we could do that. There's a cost associated to doing that. The question ultimately has to be is, and I don't take a lot of stock in the $18,000, and the reason why I don't is because that's a one-time cost. Assuming that you're not going to have somebody bulldoze a picnic table or cut the chain off and walk away with the fire pit. So to say it's a loss after the enhancement, I don't look at it that way. I look at that way as that's a one-time cost. It's not going to affect the operations moving forward. But what we're talking about is that issue, is the fact that the infrastructure that we have in place in North Huron for that campground is for 700 campground sites. It is. I mean, there could be argument made about how it was implemented and that type of stuff. I'm not going to get into that. That's not as a counselor where I look at this as where this pilot project was going. Twofold in my question about this pilot project was, did it accomplish what we were expecting it to do from an economic development perspective? Because the impression is that the BIA provided some suggestion, provided some recommendations that they believed that would enhance the experience for the theater from their new site, as well as from the downtown. I guess that's my question. That's my question from the rates, and informationally that's not included in here, which I would not expect, because there's no way to know that, and the only way to know that would be to get information from the BIA and perspectives, because really this pilot project in essence came from a suggestion from the BIA, from the Blythe BIA. So that's my suggestion. But I mean, I have to understand that the minute we turn on infrastructure, there is going to be a cost, and if we aren't going to spend the money to disseminate those 25 sites and say, these are the 25 sites after a pilot project or whatever, and say, those are the 25 sites we're willing to keep or not keep or whatever, and say, that's it, take it or leave it, then the choice is. What I'm not hearing, or I guess is a question I've heard, is really we need to understand is we were doing it for the 25 sites. Is 25 the right number after the discussion and after the user information is brought forward? If that's more information that council wants to know to whether that's the right information, I leave that up to council to decide. But those are my comments as associated to what the report tells me. There is more information that needs to be presented in the sense of how this looks in the future. But ultimately, Reeve, this is a conversation that is going to continue until either the council decides, are we going to be camping and figure out how we're going to do that infrastructure to make it successful? Because I will argue, even by disseminating 25 sites, and as soon as you have to turn on the infrastructure, you have to turn them all on and fix all the leaks that's all over the place. It's not going to be functional, and it's not going to be feasible from the 25 site perspective is where I go for that.
So I'm going to speak to this now. I think this was an amazing success from start to finish. $15,000 to $18,000. How many small companies start up wish they could make a profit in their first year? Nobody. The cost of doing business over there didn't change. It will continue on. What I would suggest we do is we see how we can make this work and stop talking about how we can shut everything down. I would suggest, based on what Trevor just said, when we go through the master plan and everything, that we see what the cost would be to loop that around at 25 or 50 and run 25 or 50. I would suggest that the campground, when we use it for the Plowman's Association, is amazing. I can't understand why we're having this conversation at all. This should be a conversation of, wow, cool, the BIA come up with an idea. Wow, cool, it worked. Wow, cool, let's continue. Having said that, we all have to worry about money. But by God, I can't for the love of me understand why anybody says it wasn't a success. Any startup business would be able to break even in their first year would be amazing in the world I live in. So I'm gonna, it's on the agenda here. It's a conversation we're having today. And when the Parks and Recreation and Culture Master Plan come forward, this will be part of the conversation. But I think everybody knows where the Reeve stands on it already.
And just to clarify, the recommendations in those reports, again, are draft recommendations,
Yeah.
right? So like the director has alluded to, if council feels you need more information, you would want to pass a motion directing staff for the information you are looking for in order to make those decisions. So all the recommendations of included in the council agenda package are, again, just draft recommendations. Council can go in any direction you please based on the information you need or the decisions you want to make.
Then I'm going to go, just a sec. Then I'm going to suggest that we just accept it as information and get more information as we move along. I'm going to start with Kevin, and then I'm going to go to Trevor.
Thank you. Through you, Reeve. I have no problem with the report. And we seem to butt heads with the, I seem to butt heads with the Recreation Department quite often. And it all, to me, it leads down to one key problem that I see that in the report. In the report, which is created by staff to bring to council, there are things in there that don't need to be in the report that infuriate myself because they insinuate a process behind the scenes being done. In the financial impact statement that you chose to put in this campground pilot project is the it goes to reduce costs to taxpayers, councils may wish to discontinue service or reduce level of service provided by this facility, and/or KGM had a report back when they were doing with both the trailer park and the Blythe campground, were direct discretionary services, not ones typically offered by municipalities. It is their recommendation that the municipality cease operation of the campground and divest of the facility. I need that to be taken into context. If you divest yourself of the facility, you no longer have a way to get into the Blythe outdoor theater. You no longer have any camping available for a cultural event. Just the added stress that puts on me when I have to go to taxpayer and defend these last two comments that are in reports every time we get something to do with, that don't need to be in it. We're talking about a pilot project. We're not talking about in this project of divesting of properties or. So that's where I get my neck up, because I have to go and people aren't going to read what they read. It doesn't need to be in there, and I'm quite willing to accept that that's a great assumption of a project. But putting comments just for the sake of putting them in there to make something easier down the road, or I don't know why they're in there. Maybe if someone would tell me why they're in there for this project, it would make it a lot easier, and I wouldn't be as embroiled in this as I am.
Okay, thank you very.
I'm done talking.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Faulkner. And yes, your concerns have been heard, and your concerns have been heard. Vicky first, then you.
Through you, Reeve. The comments are not in there to cause any issues to council, and I'm sorry if that's how it's being taken. The report is to bring to council's attention, or the comments were to bring to council's attention that it's not just the KPMG report. Like, that report was received by council as a service level review. and was brought forward. It's just to remind council of that report and the recommendation in that report. We automatically do it for the strategic plan as well. Like, these are all studies and plans that council has had staff or the township to undertake, has approved and things, and these are recommendations in those reports and things. So it's basically showing that, you know, bringing it to council's attention that there is background to this recommendation or the information in the report. It's all it is it's just pointing back to that. Counselor Sipe may be considering bringing up something, going back to the trailer park and things, that when the decision was made on the trailer park, and I'm sure if we go back and we look at that particular meeting and the video of it, Counselor Sipe brought it forward at that point, that decision that was made at that point was that we were not, he made a point of saying we're not in the campground business. Council understands that when they made that decision and things, and that is recorded, and you can go back and read it, not read it, but view the video and things, that was the point that was made when we were voting on the trailer park, that was not a business that the municipality should be in. Following that, though, the service level review came up, and that was something that was in the service level review as well. So all I'm doing is bringing forth the information that, background information that council, so that council has it before them and knows kind of where things are coming from and stuff. I'm glad that Mr. Brown clarified that comment today about the campground ceasing operations. I thought I had concerns about that as well, and had expressed my concerns that it sounded like the entire campground. I knew where they were going with it, though, that it become an events ground is what they're looking at, is that, you know, for instance, the ball tournament that we did host, and in the past it's been, you know, and we do have many, many, many years of threshers there and things like that, but more of an events ground. I'm kind of go off on a tangent here just a little bit, but the information that we did provide them, that they considered for all their recommendations and stuff, we didn't provide them with COVID years. It was all information from previous, going all the way back to 2016 and things. So they've looked at all of that, as well as the strategic plan, the building condition assessments, all of that information, and coming forward with their recommendations. So it is not my intent, Councillor Faulkner, to cause issues or anything like that. It's just to present the information and the background really on that. I mean, I could have easily put that up in the background or under the executive summary as background information or something like that. It's not to cause any issues there.
Thank you very much, Vicki. And do understand, we do appreciate everything you do. There have been some, we've challenged, this council's challenged a lot of hard issues to the staff, and I'm sure I speak on all of council, that we do appreciate all the information and the dedication you folks bring to us. Again, this is going to be brought forward, and I'm very clear on how I stand on this. It's just amazing that the volunteers came forward, the BIA got involved, and it was such I did not expect to see such good numbers. Kevin, go ahead and have a comment.
You've had Councilor Palmer. I just want to make sure you see his hand,
Oh,
too.
I'm
He's had it
sorry.
up for...
So
Your head goes that way, sir.
we're going to start with Kevin and go to you, Chris, or the other way around. We're going to go to Chris first and then over to Kevin.
Mine was up first. Thank you. Vicki, it says, the deficit in '21 was 71,000. Now, I am totally aware the 18,000 is a one-timer. So when it says deficit, that means the 15,000 has already been offered, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I just want everyone to know that
Yep.
it wasn't a break-even or near break-even year. It just wasn't. But anyways, Yeah.
So for clarification, we're talking about two different things, and it's been brought out several times. There's a deficit for the entire parcel of land, and then there's the pilot project. So we're trying to work towards making more money at the campground, and the pilot project actually did a good job. The other stuff that had to go with it, as Trevor Sipes said, it's unfortunately you had to have the whole thing up and going. Go ahead, Kevin.
Thank you, through you, Reeve. I appreciate the comment. It brought up a very interesting point. If we're going to judge a pilot project or any of our infrastructure or recreational facilities, I would like it to be done on an even keel. If it's live or die of a part of our rec plan, that if a certain program reaches a certain level of deficit, that we're going to consider divesting ourselves of it, that we consider divesting ourselves of every program that doesn't meet that same criteria. That being said, I would like to make a motion that we request staff to investigate the returning of the land back to the thrashers that we wish to divest ourselves of, that we can't make a go of, so that they can continue on with their cultural festivities in the past, and let them decide on what they do with their property. They graciously gave it to the municipality for $1, and now we're talking about taking it away.
Do I have a mover? I have a mover. Do I have a seconder? Last call for seconder. Go ahead, Rick seconds.
So Councillor Falconer, I just can't type as fast as,
Yeah,
as you were talking there, so here's what I have now, and feel free to amend if it doesn't adequately capture what you're looking for. But the draft motion right now would be that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby directs staff to investigate divesting of the Blythe Campground to the Threshers and report back, and provide a report back to council, and provide a report back for council's consideration.
I have a mover. I have a seconder. All in favor?
Questions?
Discussion.
Oh, yeah, the discussion that we're carrying on. Yes, go ahead.
So, my concern is, I'm not sure what there is to investigate, because if the municipality owns the land, and we have to declare it surplus for our needs, and therefore go through the process of doing that. The same process that we've done for the agricultural lands or whatever the case may be. I want to make, and I will ask staff to correct me if I'm wrong, but I do not believe we have the ability to just pick and choose who we want to give land to. It's an open process. It's a transparent process, regardless of how the land came into the municipality's owning in the first place. Like if it was up to me, I would definitely investigate it. But I mean, I don't know that we can. I don't think we have that ability because of the Municipal Act and the requirement to say if it's surplus for our needs, there's an open and transparent process that needs to happen. So I would ask staff to answer answer that comment, because I think that's going to determine whether that motion can even carry on its own.
So through you, Reeve Bailey, I can clarify that process. So I think you do certainly have the ability to investigate as a starting point of whether the Threshers is even interested, right? Before you declare it surplus, right? I think you would want to, if that's the approach you would want to use, you have the ability to have those initial conversations and get a sense. That being said, anyone has the ability to write to the township requesting to purchase the land, right? You are correct, it's an open and transparent process, right? So even if there was interest from the Threshers, we would still have to go through the sale and disposition of land policy process, right? So we would declare it surplus. We would advertise it for any potential interest. And again, if there's, like we've been through before, if there's multiple bidders, you would go through those processes, and council would receive the bidders and make a determination of what they wanted. As similar with the airport, right? So if there's conditions that need to be met, so to use the airport example, conditions in it that it needed to be kept as a airport, Orange needed to be able to continue to use the helipad there, right? So if there's conditions in it that it needs to be open for special events for the threshers, for example, we would build that into the processes. But at this point, there's certainly no harm in having those initial discussions, knowing that ultimately you still do have to follow the sale and disposition of land policy.
Hey, Raven, I just wanted just another comment. I mean, we've heard this a lot. There's conversations about divesting yourself of the campground. There has not been a recommendation on the table to put the council to cease the operations as of yet. We are still exploring conversations. We're still reviewing the rec master plan. We're still getting public input. I mean, I think this is premature in my mind, but I mean, I will leave that up to council to decide whether they want to investigate it or not. I just truly believe we're not even going through the process, and we're already making recommendations to do a decision that we don't even know is going to happen.
Thank you very kindly. Mr. Falconer?
Thank you, through you, Reeve. Yeah, I agree with Councillor Slight. You brought up the sole reason why I brought the motion for discussion. The way that the reports come back to council, I don't see when we're spending $400,000 on a new Dryatron for the pool, the motion doesn't come back with it at the end of the motion that staff recommends that we divest ourselves of the pool in when we're doing maintenance. I only see this when we're coming through on little things. It's coming through on a report for 25 campsites. I don't understand, and the reason why I object and brought the motion forward is we don't consider that on anything else. We're going to pave a street or we're going to sell it. We don't talk that way. We don't do our business that way. But it's in here. I would keep my mouth shut if it wasn't in there. I'm only defending the report, or I'm only going against the report. And if the report says that the township doesn't want to run it, then let's give it to somebody that will.
Yeah. So I just want to intervene here for a second and say that I understand where everybody's heart is, and I understand what we're talking about. It's very clear. I believe we've all had our ears opened and our minds open with what the conversation that's been going on, and some of the concerns, and they're good concerns. So, and staff is here too. So I'm wondering, before I call the motion, we do still have a motion that could come forward that will do the...
You can vote on it.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if you wanted to withdraw your motion, or you wanted to go through with the motion, and then we will, first of all, have it come back from our staff as the recommendation is, or do you want to go ahead with the motion you have on the floor? It's just, I'm just throwing that out, Kevin.
Other councillors have full right of putting an amendment on that, or changing that, or
Yep.
adding their own.
Yep.
So
How does it
I
read?
just put that out there for
I'll read it back.
other input. I would love to hear. I'm only one councillor
Yes, sir.
for
Yes.
for Blythe. I haven't heard any other responses from any other councillor from that.
Except myself. And Trevor. Go ahead, Carson.
Yeah, so the motion on the floor is that the council of the Township of North Huron hereby directs staff to investigate divesting of the Blythe campground land to the threshers and provide a report back for council's consideration.
And we have Kevin moving it and Rick seconding it.
Further discussion?
Further discussion, Chris?
Yeah, actually, we can't do this at this point. Like, you could say just divesting, but you can't give it to a particular entity because we need to go through the process. Perhaps it should, perhaps,
Are you making an amendment?
could I finish?
No, I'm just asking.
Perhaps we should wait till we get our final reports, and then go ahead if you wish then. Okay, I think we're a little head of the horse right now. I understand where you're coming from, though.
Yes, Councilor
we have
Cohen,
to go
you
through
can make
the
an amendment,
process.
and you can get a seconder, and that's fine. And
Or
if it passes, it
or it
passes.
can die, and just wait till the proper time.
So you're not making an amendment.
So gentlemen, again, I'm going to say I would like you to speak to the chair, okay?
Sorry, sir.
So the question is, Chris, are you making an amendment, or you're fine with the way it sits?
I just wanted to make a comment that maybe we're too soon, and just the way it's worded, it's an improbability. We can't do it through technical reasons. So if we just waited, just hold your breath on that one and bring it up again, if you wish, after the reports come through. And, then maybe it's fair game.
Just
I've
before-
already made the motion, so
Just before we go any further, I would like the clerk to clarify, if this motion fails, does it come back on the floor another time?
If this motion fails, then this motion is defeated. That's not to say at a future meeting, when council gets the rec master plan report, you can provide direction at this time. From a procedural perspective, I guess what I would say is the motion is on the floor, and you as councilors can reflect where you sit on that motion in your vote, and then if it carries, that's the direction. If it's defeated, then someone else can put a motion forward to provide direction, or it can be received for information and deferred till the adoption of the rec master plan.
Thank you very kindly. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Any further conversation? Not seeing any. I call the motion. All in favor? 2 in favor. The motion fails. Now we're going to go back to the reports. Apply. Go ahead, Trevor.
Yeah, Reeve, just to, obviously to move this forward, I'm going to provide the recommendation as stated in there that the council defer any decision regarding the future to the rec master plan as it's recommended by staff.
I have a mover. Do I have a seconder? I have Paul seconding.
So I can read that back.
Yes.
So the motion on the floor is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the report prepared by the Director of Recreation and Community Services dated November 10th, 2021, regarding the pilot project at the Blythe Campground for information purposes, and further that Council defer a decision regarding the future of the Blythe Campground until the Parks, Recreation, and Culture Master Plan has been completed.
Okay, I have a mover and seconder. All in favor? And that one carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on, North Huron Museum proposal, 5.2. Vicki, you're up again.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you.
So before you this morning is an informational report regarding the relocation of the North Huron Museum. As council will recall, on October 18th, the North Huron Museum Committee presented their proposal to council to move the museum to from its current location to the train station here in Wingham. The committee had been working well over a year. We got interrupted a little bit with COVID there, but been working on putting together that proposal. They did a tremendous amount of research and investigation into the operations of museums and funding and different ways of displaying the artifacts. And they should really be commended for their work. The report that's before you is information that staff have put together, or compiled and put together for council's consideration when making that decision. The information, again, or the report is again for informational purposes, and basically, I'm happy to answer any questions that council would have.
Okay. Questions, concerns, comments from the council? Go ahead, Paul.
Thank you, Reeve. This has been a project that's been ongoing for a long time. We got a report back, and I hate to say it, but I don't think you'll find too many mistakes in this report. It is very up to date. I'm sure you all looked at it very well. So I have to ask myself, do we want to have this historic building in town? At no cost, it's ready to go. It's on a prime piece of real estate on the main street, right beside our community trail. Yes, there will be cost to programs, that type of stuff, but this building is an asset. I know it said in there it costs, but this asset is up and it's going to be ready to go and function as a museum. Do we want to keep our history, I ask myself. I sure do. Remember back as a kid, we used to go in about when we're 5, 6, I sort of remember picking up our grandparents. They were coming from the Maritimes, pick them off the train. I take my grandkids to the museum. Well, they see that's my one-room school that I went to. Well, how could you do that? Well, the teacher back then taught 8 grades at that time. And the thing it said, Vicki alluded to about not the volunteers going down. I know I can speak truth on this, that there are volunteers here that are more than willing. They can run a program. I'll guarantee you it'll be second to none. I know before it got closed down, they used to get, these volunteers got grants. They looked after the Alice Munro thing, and it wasn't costing the municipality anything. Here's one question I do have that I can't give an answer for. The economic benefits for this town. I can't give you that. I know every car that stops there, it's going to be going through the main street, and they're going to be either getting a coffee, getting dinner, shopping, getting gas. That comes back to help out our taxpayers in town be able to pay their bills. So you're right, I can't put a price on that, what that is worth, but I know there is true benefits. Here's another thing that just happened here. We had a sale of an airport, and at the sale of that airport, we don't have workers going out there. When this happens, when everything's through, they're not there. And I saw in there that it's $29,000 that could, but we're not going to be getting rid of somebody because we got workers going out there, or not going out there. We're not going to get rid of them because it's $29,000. I'm just asking, could it be utilized to help out with this project? Last of all, we have a choice to make, whether we want to see this on the main street or not. This as a museum that's been presented to us. Do we want to see this project succeed? It was to preserve our history, past and present, and now we're looking at future. I'd like to leave it at that. The report, any questions that you had there, I know you're able to get the answers from that. At the end, I'd like to make a motion that we are going to vote on this today. Thank you very much.
So your motion is the recommended motion then, Paul, would be that, go ahead.
Yeah, so there's no recommended motion right now, it's for information. I think what Councillor Heffer is saying, that once there's an opportunity to discuss, he basically wants, I'm assuming for the benefit of the museum committee, that they get some direction one way or the other of whether council wants to proceed or whether council wants to not proceed and then, I guess, deaccession the artifacts.
So I'm just a little lost here. So the motion that...
There's no motion yet.
Okay, thank you. Because he said a motion, that threw me off. Thank you. So did you want to make a motion, Paul?
Well, you just, in a sense, what Carson said there, that's what I want to bring out at the end after the questions and whatnot.
So he's basically saying have the discussion first and then
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Okay, floor is still open. Go ahead, Kevin.
Thank you, through you, Reeve. For one point, I'd like to hear staff's comments, since this is a report brought to council from staff. I like the idea of a museum. I'm in favor of the idea of what they had. The only concerns I have is we're trying to resurrect something that's already been tried and didn't continue to have the money it needed to run, and failed. My only question is in staff's time, the way it is worded, that the museum operations would be overseen by staff and supplemented by volunteers' assistants. It is understood that the staff members would be responsible for recruiting, training, scheduling, supervising the museum, and volunteers and students. In addition, the staff would be responsible for, 1, marketing the museum, researching and overseeing the creation of the exhibits, preparing the budget, preparing funding applications, attending board meetings. It is also understood that staff members would be responsible for managing the collection, examining and accepting and declining new artifacts. At a minimum, the execution of these duties and responsibilities will require 20 hours a week by staff members. That sounds like a full-time job to me, and if any of our staff is willing to take on this job with their job, and I suggest that this be looked at by a senior management position, because this is a pretty high level. I don't think the PUC that you're talking about, the guy that plows the snow, has the qualifications or the background to do this. This is a specialized position.
Okay.
I don't know if any of our staff has that qualifications. So that's the glitch I have here. When we originally brought this proposal, was brought forward, it was for somebody to open up the door and have a kiosk there. Hand out pamphlets. Do your job. You can do your job and open the door, and if somebody comes in, well, hand out a pamphlet. That doesn't sound like that to me, and I have reservations of how we're going to provide this service through a volunteer program, when all of the structure, all of the requirements of this project to go forward and to be successful are placed on management of the municipality, not the volunteer organization that wishes this to become to fruition. That's my only comments on it.
Thank you. Did staff want to speak to that, or?
Well,
Vicky, or?
I guess, yeah, what I would say, and I mean, through no fault of the committee, not being involved in the operations, there's things that volunteers just do not have the ability to do, unfortunately, right? So, for advertising, for example, volunteers can't just slap a North Huron logo on things without it being vetted by staff, right? Generally, in large part for funding, right? It needs to be an officer of the municipality who submits those funding applications. Obviously, we see with budgets, even if it's volunteer involvement, there is someone on staff presenting those budgets to council and making sure they align, right? And those are just a few examples, kind of off the top of my head here, that I think that the director was getting at in the report is there's some things that, and again, through no fault of the committee, just not being privy to that do require staff involvement, and unfortunately, in large part, are unavoidable. The director might have more to add to.
Go ahead, Beck.
Through you, your worship, and just to add on to that, the information that was presented in the report was discussed at senior management, And we did discuss what kind of staff time would be needed. And, you know, for instance, another thing would be is as a committee of council, it required administrative support as well. So those were the things that we wanted to make sure the council was aware of. It's an informational report, just to make council aware that there's things that go on behind the scenes, not just the body that's there, that will require staff time.
So councilors understand this is for information purposes, which means this will come up at another meeting, I'm going to presume after staff and committee and
So-
different, no?
So Counselor Heffer has requested that a decision be made today. I mean, council has the ability to approve, defer, deny, do whatever you want, right? So you do have the ability to deal with it another day, but I know Counselor Heffer has mentioned there that he's looking for a determination one way or the other.
Okay. I'm going to go to Kevin first, then Paul.
Thank you. Through you, Reeve, just to respond to the information provided by staff there, and to reiterate the comment I made on previous decisions coming to council from staff. I see nothing in here of the wording that's been in other reports at the end of it, that and no checks and balances that if it doesn't make such and such of a profit, we're going to consider it to be divest ourselves in it. It's not in this report as it is in other reports. I'm just bringing that up.
Thank you very kindly. Go ahead, Vicki.
For your worship, under relationship to strategic plan, it states in there, in 2020, the township received funding, provincial funding, and commissioned the service delivery review. The review suggests that the township attempt to seek out a third party to be responsible for the operation of the facility, including the assumption of operating gains and/or losses. Or, should the township be unable to find a suitable partnership, the municipality may want to cease operations of the facility and determine how the township can display its exhibits through alternate means, such as making use of other municipal facilities.
Thank you. Paul?
Can we do that with this proposal? With the wording of what their contract was, that we provide 20 years of staff, and can we break that contract if that provision at the bottom is implemented?
Vicki?
Through you, your worship, question to Councillor Faulkner, are you asking if are we able to break that commitment, or can we cease the operations of the museum if we find in, say, 10 years it's not something we want to continue? Is that what you're asking?
Well, the contract that is being provided to us is a guarantee by this municipality that we will keep that under any circumstances open for 20 years and managed and made profitable. If that's not possible, is this clause allow us to break that at any time?
Vicki?
And is
Through
that,
you,
is
your
there, are they?
worship, my understanding, and the CAO may comment on this, but my understanding is that the offer, the proposal is that North Huron operate it for 20 years as a museum / visitor information kiosk. And after that time, it would become the asset of the municipal, there would be no conditions on it. However, if during the 20-year term, the municipality ceases operations of the museum itself, then the property would go back to the original owner who's donating, the donor of the property. So I think through your worship, I think the answer is that there is an out clause, if that's what you're asking.
So just as a heads up, I'm reading here that the impact on the budget is going to be $30,000 a year, and I'm reading that that's the overall cost. Vicki?
Through you, your worship, the proposal that was put forth by the museum committee had indicated operating costs, total expenditures and operating costs, and there's the programming, we've discussed this before, council, there's programming costs, and then there's building expenditures, okay? So the programming costs and the building expenditures are proposed to be at $48,000.
Kevin, go ahead.
Under the requests here for the amount of staff time and all the other portions that you're adding into this $30,000. Read this. Does staff believe that they can hire someone to do this job for $30,000? Or is this going to be an exponential problem?
Good, go ahead. Vic.
Through your worship, just in terms of, I think just as far as the 30,000 in terms of depending on the expertise, right, that's required for the position, you certainly would not go below 30 in the 20 hours. So if anything, it would go up versus down.
The museum's, how many hours does the museum perceive to be open during the week and on weekends? More than 20 hours?
Go ahead.
My understanding, and perhaps the director can speak to this more detail, but Monday to Friday and weekends. And my understanding, and correct me, Director, in terms of the weekends would be primarily during the summer season, and the idea being that it would be staffed by students, for example, or be supplemented by students, is my understanding.
Under municipal safety guidelines and our what do you call it, our health and safety, our volunteers not to, if it's under municipal ownership or under municipal rule, are they not supposed to be supervised by staff? Are our staff allowed to work by themselves, unsupervised, or work, without any direction?
So, yeah, from a health and safety perspective, I can speak to that. I don't necessarily know whether there's legislative requirements, but what I can say is, the North Huron's Joint Health and Safety Committee, and you might see this come up in a future report regarding rec staffing, is North Huron's Joint Health and Safety Committee has recommended that North Huron look into staffing so that no staff are working alone, because the committee has identified that as a potential hazard if someone was to slip and fall, right? So we, as a committee, are certainly looking into options right now, but that is something that we've identified as we don't want to further exacerbate the amount of staff working alone, but I mean, it's up to the staffing resources provided by council, and we will carry out our duties in accordance.
Where I was going with that question is that then the hours are probably, most likely, for staff, for health and safety, are going to be more than 20 hours a week anytime someone's in there. If not, if volunteers are allowed to work in there without supervision, then why does it require a staff member to be there to do these when it can be done by volunteers and not be on the taxpayer?
Vicki?
Through your worship, it's a condition of the land transfer that it be municipal staff. I just want to go back to the mandate of the committee. The mandate, or the terms of reference for the committee, was to come forward with a proposal. And that is what they have done. They have discussed this as to whether or not it could be run by volunteers, but there was a strong feeling that no staff needed, in order for it to be successful, there needed to be staff involved in the operations. So that's why it's coming forward. Their idea, through your worship, just further, their idea was that we would relocate a staff member there, and an existing staff member there, and allocate the minimum of 8 hours. They were projecting 8 hours of time for the operation of the museum. We do not have a staff member. That's 20% of a staff member's time. We do not have a staff member who can dedicate that number of hours to the museum or deal with anything like that. As council knows, it's come up many, many times in our discussions that about staff needing more staff resources. So we can't afford to allocate someone's time, so it would have to be a new person. And from our standpoint, from our view.
Thank you, Vicki. Further conversations, concerns? Paul, go
Through
ahead.
you, Reeve. Yes, so remember, there's going to be a kiosk there, so would that not be a staff person? How do these kiosks work then? Like,
Through you, your worship, that is identified in the strategic plan. As far as I can recall, there hasn't been a decision on that yet.
Yeah. okay. Next question, do you feel that the 20 hours can be, that's a sufficient time for looking after the work that has to be done by the municipal worker down there? You said in there 20 hours, you feel that's good enough?
Through you, your worship, we feel that that's a more realistic number as to what it will require of staff to that's not 20, that's 20 hours of their time that's dedicated to the museum.
Right.
Okay.
I just want to ask one quick question, then I'll go to Kevin and then to you, Chris. So if you have a staff member there and then you have a volunteer, that's your two people, and that makes it safe?
Not wanting, through you, your worship, to answer that question, not wanting to lead council astray, I certainly want to provide an answer one way or the other without looking into it further. But all I can say at this time is we've identified it as something to be addressed, is to minimize the number of staff working alone in buildings due to the potential hazards and security risks that potentially comes with, but not wanting to lead council astray. It's something I could certainly look into, but I wouldn't want to provide a definitive answer at this time.
Thank you very kindly. Was it Chris, was it you or Kevin? Who was next?
Kevin.
Just a quick comment. The staff hours requirement in the museum are being 20 hours per week. Does the staff member have the ability to then go to another facility or do other work, the other 20 hours of their week, or do they have to be there?
Through you, your worship. So the proposal is that an existing staff person would dedicate 8 hours of time strictly to the museum, but they would be on site for that entire time. Okay? The report indicates that we think that 8 hours isn't enough for the museum to do all the things that are required for the museum, and that 20 hours is more realistic. As I understand it with the proposal that came forward from the landowner and things, is that we would have to have staff there in the building all the time. So if and that's another reason why we have to look at the fact that it needs to be a new position, because we have staff members who have jobs that require them to be at other facilities and things, like, whether they're to do their other parts of their job. They're not strictly sitting at a desk. In our situation, in order to do that, we'd have to move a frontline person, right? Because staff wear many hats and things, whether they're working with community groups or they're, having to go to a meeting or anything like that. They're wearing different hats and things. So that's why we felt that an existing staff member would not be able to be that person.
So the supervisor position could be fulfilled in the context of this agreement. In your opinion, as staff, for 20 hours a week, given the health and safety regulations that you as staff have to work under, that these are realistic and true numbers and costing? Or can you see this being double that? Can you see in your in the implementation of this, not just the screen print that we have here, that under the proposal will work under these 20 hours, one person.
Through you, your worship, I think some things are getting blurred here. So the proposal requires a staff person to be there full-time. It does. It requires a staff member to be there full-time. The numbers in the report, in terms of the proposal, talks about a staff person dedicating 8 hours of time, and we are now saying, we think it, with all the things that staff would be responsible for, and not just that staff member, that's where the $20,000 is coming in, being more realistic. It's really how much of that time is going to be needed there. So, can we hire someone to be there, for the $20,000 or $30,000? That's not fulfilling the requirement of having someone there full-time. Does that help?
Yeah, no, I was just curious as to the laws that govern the employment of municipal staff, that the hours that there's going to be open on the weekends and through the days, that's not one position. That's 2 people to fill that minimum. That's not taking into consideration them working from home. I say that with reverence. Or any future allocation of requirements for staff to do. So I just want a clear picture of the actual costs and how many hours and how many people. When we're dealing with one that says 20 hours a week, a staff member, when we already know that they have to be there full time, we probably know that they have to have supervision. If there's a lot of volunteer there has to be another person there. So now we're talking more and more people, and so we're not just actually just making a judgment on this proposal as it is here. This proposal has growth in it that we don't know, and it's not being addressed.
So just for clarification, Vicki, what I've heard is the staff member would be there for 40 hours a week, but the staff member would only be working for the museum for 20 hours a week, whatever it was, and they would stay there and still do their township work on another project rather than getting in their car and driving to an office at the town hall here. Do I understand that right?
Yes.
Okay, I think that's where some of the confusion is. So if I did that right, yes, the person's going to be there for 40 hours a week, but she's in front of a computer, so she's not only going to be doing that work, she can do other work. And then for 20 hours a week, she is not doing the work there. She's actually working on other projects for the town.
Right, I
how do you
think what
cover
Councillor
supervision for the
Heffer
weekend?
is, or Councillor Falconer, sorry, is getting at is the implications beyond that, right? So as council's aware, if it's open on weekends too, right, you're either into overtime, right? Part-time staff, just like full-time staff, are subject to vacation time, which they're mandated to take, right? So that's really the intention of this report is the implications, again, through no fault of the museum committee, that they just wouldn't be aware of, that operationally that we have to make note of these things, right? So for us to say, yep, we will dedicate one person there Monday to Friday kind of thing, logistically, that person needs time off too, right? So then you have to have that coverage as well. And overall, the intention of that report was just to flag some of those things, I think, and the director can certainly correct me if I'm wrong in that.
Through your worship, Clerk Lamb is absolutely right. It was just to make council aware of those things, because he's absolutely right. You know, things have changed with employment standards and things, and we are required to provide, whether they're part-time or full-time or whatever, we have to provide vacation time, sick time, those types of things, even for the part-time staff, so that they can be away from work. And then there's how is that going to be covered? That coverage has implications and things. So it's, again, this report is it's an informational report. And it's to give information for council to consider when deciding how to move forward. We want council to be aware of all costs that would be involved and not just strictly the museum operating costs, that there's other implications on other, like, for instance, the admin support for meetings and things that come into play here as well.
Thank you very kindly. Further conversation, concerns? Not seeing anyone, anything, anybody? Something like that. Would somebody like to put a motion forward, or the motion that's presented for this? Paul, go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to bring it that we come to a vote on this, if that's possible.
Okay. You gonna craft a vote then? I'm not sure.
Well, so if you want a decision to be made, you should craft a motion either in favor of the proposal, like directing staff to proceed with the proposal as presented by the museum committee, or either to direct staff to receive the proposal for information and direct staff to go in a different direction, right? You can't necessarily direct that direction be given without providing what that direction is, right? So I'll throw that out there to council, but if someone wants to put a motion forward as to which direction you would like staff to proceed in, that is the best way to move this forward to some sort of a conclusion one way or the other.
I guess I'd like to see a motion for given clarity, is it going to go or not going to go? I guess that's what they're asking for.
Right, so same thing again, so you're looking, basically, would you be putting a motion forward that North Huron accept the proposal?
Yeah.
Is it-
Yes.
Is that
Do
enough
I-
direction for you? Is that what you're looking?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, through your worship, that's fine. I think I understand Councillor Hefner's wanting council to make a decision that, are we going to provide museum service, accept the proposal and provide museum services, or is it different direction that council wishes to go? That's what you're wanting to know, right? You want to know if council is going to approve the proposal.
Do I have a seconder? Chris seconds. Further conversation? Go ahead, Kevin.
No.
Anyone else?
A recorded vote.
A recorded vote has been requested.
So maybe I'll read this back first, and Councillor Heffer, you can feel free to correct me if it's not what you're looking for, but the motion on the floor would be that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby accepts the proposal of the Museum Committee and directs staff to proceed with next steps in the process. And Councillor Palmer, you're okay with that direction as the
Yes, I
seconder?
am. Yeah.
And Councillor Heffer has requested a recorded vote. So if there's no further discussion, I will call that vote. So Councillor Falconer,
No.
Councillor Heffer,
Yes.
Councillor Palmer,
Yes.
Councillor McBurney,
Yes.
and Reeve Bailey.
Yes.
So that motion carries 5-1, with the no being Councillor Falconer. Oh,
Okay.
sorry, 4-1, with the no being Councillor Falconer.
Go ahead, Kev.
I'd like to bring forward a motion that the same staffing requirements be required for all North Huron managed facilities.
Okay. So Kevin has a motion. Do we have a seconder?
We would need further clarification
Further clarification.
on,
We're making large dollar decisions and hiring people, hiring more staff to do more things when we don't have staff to do the things we're doing. If you want I agree. If you want the museum to succeed, it does need staff, it does need control, it does need someone daily looking at it. But so does a successful campground. So does a successful splash pad, ball diamond. A hockey arena wouldn't run itself if you just had ice there. It'd be chaos. No one would know when they come and go and who's going to use it. But we don't apply those generics to every portion of our system. We pick and choose which one we're going to throw money at. Council just decided to throw, in my opinion, 2 new staff members that are not going to work for the money that we're here, but we're okay with that. But we won't do it to the programs that we already have. So my motion is that we apply the same demographics to new projects or to old projects that we do new projects. So if we have projects, I'm going to go back to my high horse again, because it's been on this agenda, well, the campground. Of course it's not going to work. We don't have anybody there running it. We don't have anyone there promoting it on the radio and doing the things that they need to do. There's nobody there handing out pamphlets on a daily basis for 40 hours a week. We can't even get the current staff to go out and get the money from the people that are camping there. Because it's a wide open spot. And we know we don't care, we don't look at who's got, as long as it's on the website, it's okay. But we don't see whether it's them or not. So I'm just infuriated that we are going ahead with projects of large dollar projects when we don't put the same emphasis on the projects we already have. And that's my motion, is that we use the same the council directs staff to use the same demographics on current projects that we already have, current assets that we already have, at the same level that we just gave new ones. Fair across the board. If something's going to fail, it's going to fail. If it's going to win, it's going to win. But if it needs staff people to win it, let's hire more staff people to win these things. And my motion is to treat current assets with the same mathematics that we just proposed this one.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, Councillor Falconer. It's not always necessarily apples to apples. So I mean, if this captures what you're looking for, we will, as staff, will do our best to investigate what you're looking for. But again, like, more clarity with this is certainly better, because of it always not being apples to apples.
How about a motion to that all assets, all park and recreation assets have a management contingency to it. That means that our assets aren't just left to be, it's a field out there. We have someone there working on it, making it successful. Because that's what we're asking this to do. We're asking the municipality to make this successful. An organization has come forward and said, we'd like a new entity, or revive one that's failed, and put staff, time and effort and employment behind it. I just asked that we look at all of our assets and put the same emphasis behind the ones we already have that we're neglecting, as we do the new ones we don't even know what's going to happen. So, equal management for all North Huron assets. And I like that, if I get a seconder, I would like that a recorded vote.
So I feel like I've captured what you're looking for here, but again, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, if it's not. Right, so the motion would be that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby directs staff to investigate implementing equal staffing resources to all parks and recreation assets in order to manage the assets to ensure their success.
There's nothing in there to say proper staffing levels.
have equal staffing levels.
Equal staff? Yes.
Yep, so I can read it back one
No,
more
no,
time.
that- No, that's, okay. I just was swallowing that whole thing.
Nope.
And I'll see if I get a seconder. That's easy enough.
Does he have a seconder? Yes, he does. I will.
Comments?
You may, sir.
Thank you, Reeve. Adequate staff, first of all, adequate staffing does not ensure success anywhere, so forget that one. And I found it interesting that you used this word, that you're furious. So this furious emotion of yours is driving this thought that you're upset about, okay, maybe having some new people at the museum because it's the only way to make the museum work because of the agreement that we have with the provider of it. So you're complaining about the cost of maybe of two new people or a person and a half, but then your motion, it just throwing, that means we have to hire a whole bunch more people. So it doesn't make sense that you want to.
Gentlemen,
No,
we're going to slow down
It
here.
doesn't make sense that you want to hire, you're upset about hiring one or two people, and then all of a sudden, because of probably all our assets, I don't know how many people it could be, maybe another 10, like, it doesn't make sense. So I'm not sure where you're going with it.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Trevor, go ahead.
Thank you, Eve. Based on the conversation of the motion, I want to reiterate to council. Council determines service delivery. So we dictate to staff what services we want to be in and what services we don't want to be in. It's staff's requirement to staff those and resource them accordingly based on the recommendations that council provides them. So I don't foresee in my mind that anybody in the municipality looks for anything to fail. It's not, I would not expect a municipal staff member to actively try to let something fail. I don't think that's happening. I hope it's not happening. But we as council, we dictate service delivery. Like, we dictate whether we're going to be in a certain service. Recreation. Public Works. We can't do pick and choose certain things because obviously some of the things are legislated. But there are certain things that we can pick and choose from, and that's what we're deciding to do. I mean, as Councillor Faulkner's question, or as relates to his motion, do I disagree with his concept? No, I don't disagree with it. The concept is that we provide adequate resources for all the services that we have. That's in reality, in my opinion, that's what his motion is. And I think we should want that for everything that we do. But in saying that, we have to then look at the alternative that says, does that make sense from a service delivery review? We just went through the service delivery review conversation. KPMG did it. So, in theory, I completely agree with Councillor Faulkner, in theory. But in practice is going to be a completely different concept about how those resources are managed and what those costs are to them, and whether we want to deliver that service. Not specifically speaking to any one service, I'm just saying that is what council's going to have to do to determine whether they want to be continued to be in those services. To understand what the true academic cost is to ensure something is successful. I honestly don't believe in my head that we're actively trying to make things not successful. It's just not something of all the staff that we have that's not been the obvious priority, because there's a whole bunch of other things that are legislated by the province, legislated by the federal government, legislated by us, that cause those problems. So in theory, I completely agree with him. But I think you're gonna have to understand when you put that, whatever that theory is, or whatever this motion comes back, I concur. I'm gonna say you're probably gonna get more reports come back from, reports from staff that says, are you sure you want this discussion? Because it's going to have budget implications. And are you sure you want to have that service? So, I mean, we need to resonate what what this motion's going to do. Because it's going to force staff to relook at the services that we offer and bring back them as what they are from a profitability or from a service perspective and say, okay, council, don't shoot the messenger. Here you go. And that's what we're going to get. Kevin?
Thank you. Through you, thank you, Deputy Reeve Sipe. I wholeheartedly agree. My whole purpose of that is that what you just proposed may be an impossibility is the same framework that we just passed the last motion. By that, for the, under those same conditions that are set out, that we must provide 20 years of people of service there. We must provide 20 years of staff that we don't have, that we now have to hire. We just use that mechanism that you just said that we may be, watch out what we're asking for here in this motion. I totally agree. All I'm asking for is, you just set a precedent to make decisions under that framework. All I'm asking is that framework for the stuff we already have and we're trying to hang on to. If you want new things, great. I'm all for it. I want the museum. I want it to be successful. But I know what it's going to cost. And I'm not kidding myself. And I know how long. I would like that same framework, that if we're going to have a trial for 25 lots, that we put people behind that. We put the same 20 years. Let's try this for 20 years and see if it works. But I want staff to be there working on that to make sure that it is successful, and they must look after this, they must look after that, they must look after everything. I just want the same things for my things that you want and just passed for your things.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Chris?
Thank you, Reeve. I think we all like the idea of having a museum. So thinking about costs, there's part of it I don't care for. But then I think back, well, we're not spending, what, $3 million to fix the old one? We're not having to buy land and build a building. So we're saving money in those areas. So, yeah, there is a cost, and we have to stomach 40, 50. We don't know what it's going to be.
Chris,
Sorry?
it's just brought to my attention that that was the previous discussion. There's a different motion on, that's passed, so we need to be talking about the motion that's on the floor now.
I'm sorry.
Okay. No, it's all good. Okay, so there's a motion on the floor. Did the clerk want to is there more conversation on this?
I haven't got a seconder yet, so.
Yes, you have a seconder.
Oh, sorry.
I will read back the motion. So the motion on the floor is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby directs staff to investigate implementing equal staffing resources to all parks and recreation assets in order to manage the assets to ensure their success. So Councillor Falconer is the mover of that motion, and Reeve Bailey is the seconder, and Councillor Falconer has requested a recorded vote. So Deputy Reeve Sipe,
Yes.
Councillor Falconer,
Yes.
Councillor Heffer,
Yes.
Councillor Palmer,
No.
Councillor McBurney,
Yes.
and Reeve Bailey.
Yes.
So that motion carries 5-1. with the no being Counselor Palmer.
Thank you very kindly. Okay, closed session, we do not have one. Confirmatory bylaw number 89, 2021, that bylaw number 89, 2021 being the bylaw to adopt, confirm, and ratify matters dealt with by the Council of Township of North Huron at the November 10th, 2021 meeting to be introduced, read a first, second, third, and finally time and signed by the Reeve and clerk and engrossed in the bylaw books. Do I have a mover? I have Kevin moving. Do I have a seconder? Chris is seconding. All in favor? Carries. The adjournment of this meeting is at 1 o'clock, that the Council of the Township of North Huron agrees that there being no further business before council, the meeting hereby adjourns at 1 p.m. Do I have a mover? I have Rick moving, seconder. Paul seconding. All in favor? Carries.
That was fun.
Now what do we do for the rest of the day?